Gog and Magog. Hello, huge movie fanatic Nate coming your way on a chilly December day in 2016. I'm coming at you to do one of my famed movie/Blu-ray reviews, this time of the motion picture by the name of C.H.U.D. Now it's very exciting because the Blu-ray of this just recently came out within the last 2 or 3 weeks, so we're going to be doing obviously my review of the movie and then the very recently released Blu-ray by the fantastic Arrow Films. So on to the review of the movie. Now I actually pretty much grew up with this movie back when I was 11, almost approaching the age of 12. It was kind of the time when I was really getting into horror movies and just, really coming of age as a child and going from a child to young adult, approaching the teen years and stuff. And C.H.U.D is one of the first horror movies, that I saw back on this channel, TV 23 back in the day. I saw Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Nightmare on Elm Street 1 and 2, and C.H.U.D, and they played, from what I can remember, I taped them off TV back then, and from what I can remember, they played these movies basically uncut, with the exception of, just bleeping the swear words. So anytime someone would say a swear word, for example, from this movie, why are you putting makeup on your, they'd mouth the word and it just nothing would come out. So, as far as I can remember, they played C.H.U.D basically uncut, like with all the gore, in the movie, as far as I can remember. So back when I was, 11 going on 12 and getting into horror movies, I was still kind of, I was a squeamish kid and a sensitive kid and a kid that was just afraid of horror movies when I was younger. So when I saw this movie, I was still, on the teeter-totter between, like, getting creeped out by movies and grossed out, and also, liking the gross factor and stuff like that. When I was a little kid, I liked the gore more than I do now. I don't really care, I don't really like gore anymore. So I can remember, back seeing it when I was 11 on TV when the credits first started, and the electronic music kind of really set the scene really early on for me, just with the titles, John Hurd, Daniel Stern, Christopher Curry, and then the picture of, or the scene of, the Christopher Curry's, in the movie's wife's character gets famously, dragged down the sewer by a C.H.U.D at the beginning, really set the scene, or set the stage for the movie, fantastically. And what's interesting about this movie is, generally when I think of C.H.U.D, I think of more on-screen C.H.U.D action than actually is in the movie. When the movie starts out, it's basically, we focus on this captain, Captain Bosch, played by Christopher Curry, is dealing with all these missing persons, and also we focus on Daniel Stern's character, which is like he runs this soup kitchen for homeless people, and a lot of his, all of his underground people, except one crazy guy with a big knife and likes to quote whatever gibberish, is like the only one, presumably because he has the big knife, is the only one of his underground people, homeless people, that hasn't, stopped coming to the soup kitchen. So it's a very slow kind of, it's really not a movie for ADHD kind of people, because it's really kind of a slow build to the, final kind of crescendo of the movie. As a kid, even at 11, I kind of didn't really mind watching the whole thing front to back for some reason. Just because even though there isn't a lot of on-screen C.H.U.D action, the whole movie is everyone talking about, underground and, people needing weapons, and, the people who live underground wanting guns and knives and things to protect themselves. And so it's kind of cool, because all this talk about underground stuff and unrest underground, and this EPA probe that's going on like 3 weeks or so longer than normal, and all this kind of mystery surrounding underground, activity and stuff, it kind of, just the talk about it throughout the whole movie kind of is a kind of a cool way, instead of showing it the whole movie, is a kind of a cool way to keep the whole underground, subterranean, whatever, aspect of this movie alive throughout the whole movie. It should be noted that this movie is fantastically grungy and fantastically realistic in the sense of undergroundness, and having watched some of the Arrow video, retrospective interviews with some of the people involved with the making of the movie, I was surprised to see that some of the underground stuff is actually manufactured set. because it all looks absolutely fantastic. I just assumed they went down underground and filmed all this stuff just underground, but some of it, I think primarily just that big kind of curvy, tunnel with the one hole in it, where the one guy gets dragged in there and John Hurt tries to pull him out. I think that was, pretty much the only manufactured stuff. I'm not sure, but the movie has a fantastically realistic, homeless, grungy, gritty, nasty atmosphere to it. And that's that leads me to one of the other things that's fantastic about the movie is the three actors, John Hurt, Daniel Stern and Christopher Curry, the first two of which would end up appearing in a movie together. I don't think they're ever in this, no, they're never in the same scene, but they would end up, John Hurt and Daniel Stern, of course, would end up appearing in Home Alone. And I just watched Home Alone 3 and was absolutely flabbergasted because Christopher Curry plays very much the same kind of, I think he's like a top, one of these big, like an FBI agent or something. He's a kind of the same, basically plays the same part, Christopher Curry, in Home Alone 3 than he plays in C.H.U.D, which is like a, top brass or topish kind of brass of a, law enforcement, law enforcement setup. So it's crazy that who knows. Oh, and it should be noted also that two people that appear in C.H.U.D also would go on to be in the movie Rocketeer as well. So that's kind of interesting. So anyway, but what I was getting at before I got off on a sidetrack, just leading off naming off the three lead characters, is the acting in this movie. A lot of people get down on this movie, and I can kind of understand why. It's kind of just a whatever-ish kind of movie with, doesn't really, I don't know. I can understand why people get down on this movie. I've got a soft spot for it because I grew up with it. I saw it when I was 11 and, lived with it ever since. So, but actually, one of my arguments, against, or for the movie and, against the people the naysayers or the people that give this movie a lot of crap is that the three leads, the acting, the whole movie is very realistic. I was commenting on how realistic the grunge, nasty, underground homeless aspect, homeless people and I aspect was. The dialogue is fantastically written. As a matter of fact, the whole kind of, the whole movie in a way of just being, just the way it unravels, very slowly like a flower in the spring, opening up, and just gives you all these this and that, and you follow two different, Bosch, and then, cutting back and forth between what's going on with Bosch and, the photographer in Daniel Stern's Soup Kitchen, and how all these three different stories quickly become interrelated is kind of cool. In the way that we find out, like halfway through the movie or whatever, that the woman at the beginning of the movie is Captain Bosch's, Christopher Curry's in the movie's wife, and it's a pretty competently written as far as scenario and also dialogue. Piece of work really, and not only is the dialogue, I feel, really just kind of just low key in a fantastic way, realistic, but it's also delivered by three fantastic actors, that much more higher caliber than I think you normally find in a movie, of this budget or this kind of genre, just like an underground monster movie. So the three the three stars, the first three billings, or basically the three male stars of this movie, are absolutely fantastic. I'm basically reviewing the longer cut, which is the one that was put out. It was kind of, I think the first time anyone had ever seen it was when it was put out by Anchor Bay. I just looked at the DVD today, which actually I thought it came out in 2005, but it actually came out in 2001. So I think that was pretty much the first time fans had actually seen the longer cut of C.H.U.D, which has more character stuff between John Hurt's character and his wife and stuff regarding just pregnancy and all kinds of whatever. So at the end of the day, I think C.H.U.D is it's fine. I mean, it's kind of cool, The stars is kind of difficult for me. I think I'm just going to bite the bullet and go 3 out of 4 stars for C.H.U.D, just because, maybe half of a star of that is probably just sentimentality and stuff like that. But as I said before, having grown up with this movie and first seeing it when I was 11, and first, just literally the first few months of me really just biting the bullet and say, okay, I'm going to get into this horror movie stuff because it's new, it's exciting, it's uncharted territory, it's forbidden territory, something that at that age I probably really shouldn't have, been getting into, but so many do at that age and even younger, so it's really not a big deal. But it was exciting. C.H.U.D was one of the first horror movies, rated R horror movies that I ever really saw. So pretty exciting. And a lot of people, including Daniel Stern in the commentary from 2001, which was luckily ported over to the Arrow video release. Daniel Stern, I do got to disagree with Daniel Stern about the design of the C.H.U.D monsters, in particular the one that attacks the John Hurd's wife's character in the movie in the apartment. I thought that, when we actually get the close look at that particular C.H.U.D in that scene, particularly when he comes in and he's doing this thing where he's like looking around, I think the design is absolutely fantastic and really nasty ass looking. And in a lot of ways, for my money, there isn't enough screen time of the C.H.U.D the C.H.U.D creatures in this movie for my taste. But I guess I do kind of maybe agree with Daniel Stern about the extending neck thing. I think was kind of goofy, but whatever. It creeped me out as a kid, and particularly because he extended his neck conveniently so she could chop it off, which was kind of funny. And before I get on to the review of the Blu-ray, let me just say in closing of my review of the movie that obviously the acronym C.H.U.D stands for Cannibalistic Humanoid Underground Dweller. But what's really cool is usually if there's an acronym for something, there's only it's only for one thing. What's really cool about this movie and this name, the title of the movie, and this acronym C.H.U.D is that there's actually in the movie two meanings for it. The first one being that, and the second one coming to find out that it's really, and this is the big cover-up secret of the movie, which is the whole reason these C.H.U.Ds are coming to life is basically the government is dumping all kinds of nuclear hazardous, all kinds of just nasty-ass, contaminated, potentially nuclear radioactive waste down underneath us, underneath the streets of Manhattan. In New York, so that's the whole reason, these homeless people, undergrounders as they're called, are being, radiated by all this toxic waste that they're just storing, they're just putting underneath the city. But the actual, real meaning of C.H.U.D is contamination hazard urban disposal is the real meaning for the acronym of C.H.U.D. And the guy, the shady, politician guy, kind of just, I think, gave them this bone to chew on, this, cannibalistic humanoid underground driller, just to kind of, keep them whatever, keep them. Presumably, the character made that acronym up on the spot just to kind of mislead them, away from the real truth, which is the contamination hazard urban disposal of radioactive toxic waste. So that's the whole reason. I almost forgot to mention that's the whole reason these monsters exist in the first place is just because of them putting this hazardous nuclear waste down in the where these underground homeless people live. So that's where the actual if you haven't seen the movie and don't know anything about it, that's where the actual C.H.U.D creatures come from. So having said that, obviously you probably know by now that Arrow Video, basically, in my opinion, the criterion of, the genre movies, special editions on Blu-ray, and sometimes they come with a DVD, has recently put out in November, which is strange because they put this out in the month that I first saw, November was the month that I saw C.H.U.D on TV for the very first time. So many Novembers later, Arrow Video would put out a fantastic Blu-ray of C.H.U.D with this newly commissioned artwork, which fantastically captures the spirit of the creatures in the subterranean underground stuff. I'm not too keen on it or that new kind of C.H.U.D logo or whatever, but luckily, just like so many of the Shout Factory or Arrow Video releases, you have the option to do this newly commissioned artwork, or you can flip the cover around and do The original artwork, which is the art that was, I grew up with, which was featured on the original media VHS tape release, and probably even featured on the, theatrical posters and stuff like that. So I'm going to leave this artwork on versus the newly commissioned, because this is what, the artwork that, for me, represents the movie C.H.U.D. And I'll just show the back of the box for the special features, and you can pause it to look at all the special features if you so choose. I'm just going to mention some of the important ones. This Blu-ray does feature fantastically, amazing brand new 2K film transfer, which is very cool. It ported over, luckily, from the Anchor Bay, the 2001 Anchor Bay DVD, the fantastic commentary, which is, a must listen to commentary featuring, in addition to others, John Hurd, Daniel Stern, and Christopher Curry. One of the standout things about this particular release that, the Blu-ray features is, I think it is standard definition, but it features an extended shower scene of John Hurd's character's wife after she discovers the dead dog. She calls the cops and then feels all grimy and dirty or something after having been down there and discovered the dog, so she takes a shower or whatever. That's also the scene where the shower gets plugged just for no good reason, and she pulls on it with the coat hanger and blood splurts out. But before that happens, we actually do see that character, presumably a body double, actually, with her back to us, turns around, and we get to see a little bit of tit shot, and so there actually was nudity filmed for the shower scene, which, understandably so, was probably cut just because it wasn't like a sexy kind of a mood for that particular scene. She just discovered a dead dog. It's just kind of a nasty scene, so why are we going to show tits right after that? So it was kind of a shame in a way, to pay someone to show pretty nice tits and then cut them from the movie. So whatever. So that's one of the, one of the really standout things for me about this release is seeing some tits. There's some newly shot, interviews with people. I don't know. You've seen the back of the box, so you know what other special features are there. Just kind of boring filming locations filmed, in 2016 of, some of the spots where they filmed and stuff. It should be noted that the new 2K transfer does look absolutely fantastically stunning. Back when I revisited the DVD this summer after this release, the news of this release, came on the scene, I was contemplating whether or not I was going to get this particular release, and I was just like, it's so dirty and grungy and grimy, but I'm glad I did, because having gotten the release of this new Blu-ray of C.H.U.D, it is absolutely fantastic looking and sharp and crisp. And another really cool thing about this release is Disc 1, which is of course the longer version of C.H.U.D, features a third audio track with a 32-minute long audio interview with the two guys who did the music for C.H.U.D. And if you think that's cool, just wait. After the interview's done, on this third audio track in stereo, certain selections, I don't know, it's probably the C.H.U.D soundtrack, certain selections, I don't think it's everything from the movie, but I'd say the majority of music from the movie in stereo, the C.H.U.D soundtrack, if you will, is presented from basically the 32-minute mark to the 1 hour and 22-minute mark on the disc. So between 32 minutes and 1 hour and 22 minutes, you get to hear in stereo nothing but C.H.U.D music soundtrack, which is a really cool, just extra feature that isn't really that common on Blu-ray releases. Not that I'm aware of. In a perfect world, all these special edition Blu-ray releases would all feature the soundtracks on an alternate audio track, but whatever, it's really cool we got that here now. And I think I should mention something really briefly that has been mentioned on forums and stuff online in regards to the theatrical cut, or the Arrow Home Video's version of the theatrical cut. Basically, I don't know when it was, if a New World bought this movie or whatever, but regardless, on the home video version, I don't know if this was featured in the theater, because I never saw it in the theater, but in the first home video version of this movie, there's like things that presumably New World pictures when they bought C.H.U.D added to make the movie more funny for some dumb shit reason or something like that. Basically, the first of which is when the the bum at the beginning of the movie during the credits walks around out from behind the in the alley or whatever and is mumbling to himself. In the actual version, original version, you didn't hear anything he was saying, but I think they actually put some goofy lines in there and stuff like that. When the little girl is, granddad is attacked in the phone booth, and the thing hanging there, it's like, did you have Mexican food again? And all this and that. And when that woman screaming for help, it's like, call the Ghostbusters. These kind of just lines, audio lines that were added in there are not featured in the theatrical version, which had got some people on various forums online in a little bit of a tiff. I can understand their problems, because here where you're basically presented with a movie that's supposed to be the theatrical version, but yet it doesn't have that stuff. And again, I don't know if that was in the theatrical version or not. I know it was in the first home video version, but whatever. My particular take on these, missing, humorous, extra little bit of lines and stuff that they threw in here and there and whatever it's negligible in my opinion. I can understand why people are, you can potentially get upset about that, but those lines don't really add anything to the movie. So, I mean, I guess a completely anal completist, might want those lines, but for me, they kind of. I haven't actually seen this movie on frickin' VHS for a long time, so I don't even I can't imagine those lines add a whole lot to the movie anyway. So just be noted, if you're getting this 2-disc limited edition in hopes that you can hear these humorous lines in the theatrical cut, they're not there. So that's one thing worth noting. One of the main reasons I was actually baited into getting this release is because for the first months, or I don't know how long this limited edition lasts, but this is a 2-disc limited edition, which contains, once they're done with this particular limited edition, which contains a second disc featuring the first disc has the long cut that we're familiar with from the Anchor Bay DVD, and then the limited edition has a second Blu-ray disc, which features what they call the theatrical cut, where presumably they just take the long version, and just cut it down, cut the stuff out, and then you use like some different material for the end, some different footage from a different print for the end or something like that. And so, I did say in the past that I preferred the theatrical cut to the longer one. Having seen the longer one again and the theatrical, I'm like, no, not so much. What I do prefer about the theatrical is the diner scene with John Goodman is at the end. I like that at the end of the movie more. If you could take the long cut and just rearrange, I prefer the long cut mostly, and then just put the diner, massacre. Well, you don't see anything, but the diner scene where the C.H.U.Ds attack the diner at the very end, that would be like the Nate cut of C.H.U.D. So a mostly cool movie from the early to mid 80s with some classic faces and classic monsters. Fantastic new Arrow Video Blu-ray release, which I would heavily recommend getting. I think you can get it on this website called bullmoose.com for probably like $20 or something like that. Although I've never ordered anything from them myself, I've heard good things and plan to order from them in the future. So thank you very much for watching my review of C.H.U.D, movie/Blu-ray, and as always, we'll catch you next time.